Yeah, we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Bearded Men of Real Estate Show. I'm Ray, and this is Dan. Say hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
And we are the Bearded Men of Real Estate. Perfect host for a show called the Bearded Men of Real Estate, so I'm glad the producers found us for this.
So happy about it.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Tons of curveballs being thrown our way, which Dan was just talking about. Do you want to tell people what happened to your camera?
My cats broke my camera. So literally the last 20 minutes is me. I had an entire setup ready to go today. I had to move everything back to New York. So you're seeing,
there you go. Yeah, the New York skyline in honor of our special guest.
Yeah, I've never used this skyline before, but I had a whole different setup. Everything, the camera, I bought all this new equipment. Cats broke the camera.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring up our special guest because Tim Macy is here. And he said, I came here for Jay Glazer. Stop making us wait. So without further ado, welcome Jay Glazer.
Hey.
Jay is
actually in New York. So
he's actually in New York, not a poster of New York from LA.
I could see myself in your poster.
He's right. If you look, he's right in that.
Yeah, he's waving. It's like real satellite. Real satellite look.
Yeah, it's not creepy at all.
Jay, how long have you been in real estate?
I have been in real estate. God, what year is it? 2020, right? It's only the best year ever. I've been in real estate almost 11 years now. 11 illustrious years.
Wow.
Illustrious.
That's nice. And how long have you been in New York? Are you a lifetime New Yorker?
I am a lifetime New Yorker. Obviously a very touchy subject. Born and raised. I have been in Greenwich Village my entire life, all 35 illustrious years.
Ooh, very nice. I feel like you should say Greenwich Village. Greenwich Village.
I don't know. Is that a Seinfeld reference?
No. Oh, Melissa Mars joined us. She says, hey, if you are live, you could comment, and then I can bring up your comments just like I did with Melissa, and we could talk about you or your comment. So please do comment. Tim Macy said, Jay came out of the womb selling condos.
Well, Tim, that's partially true. I mostly came out of the womb selling co-ops, which is a specialty product here in New York City.
This is interesting. So we're going to get into more of this later because we have an article about the millennials possibly buying some of these condos. And I want to know if this is actually happening in New York because it sounds kind of pricey in New York. One of the reasons we brought you on the show, despite being fairly smooth shaven, is that we've had several weeks now in the news articles about how everyone is running out of New York. So I know you have some comments about this, and I saw some of your posts yesterday about Seinfeld's comments too. So I want you to hold them if you can, because we're going to get there. But Dan, before we get into all this stuff, would you tell us what Be More is actually all about?
You know what? I'd love to. Now, when Ray and I met about 3 years ago here on the Winners, actually we met over 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
I had an idea for a show because I am, in fact, if you couldn't tell, I'm a bearded man of real estate. But when I met Ray, I noticed something very interesting about him. He's afraid of clowns. Did you guys know that about Ray?
I am afraid of clowns, but not as much as Melissa Mara.
Yeah.
That may have been a reference just for Melly Mel. No, I noticed obviously he has a beard as well, but he actually had a layout for the show, and it's the same layout we do today. But what I also noticed is that he loves giving value up front to his clients, and so do I. So it's more about being more as an agent, but also being more as a human.
Yep, and we do have a ton of good news today. And one of the, I guess, good and bad news today. And one of the things that I always notice is that in conversations with my clients every week, some of these news stories come up. And that's really the reason why we talk about it, because in our opinion, a rising tide lifts all boats. So we look at these news stories, and we were kind of discussing these news stories behind the scenes for a long time. So we thought, hey, we should start a show that's doing this. And hopefully other real estate agents would tune in, people that are interested in the industry, or maybe a homeowner would tune in and see something that could add value to them. So that's why we do the show. Well,
real quick before we do our amazing high-end transition, if you're watching the show, can you run numbers real quick?
Oh, yeah.
On my second story, so Ray's going to hit a story after our amazing transition. Then my first story, our second story. Yeah. Real quick, just do your closed numbers in your city, your area, whatever. Quick closed numbers for June, and then quick closed numbers for July. That's it. And then if you want to run actives, current actives, you can. But I'm going to run through. I'm really curious because my numbers, they're interesting. So sorry, Ray, go ahead.
Melissa Mars says clowns are scary, and Eric says we need a Puddles intervention.
We do.
Puddles the clown.
Puddles is amazing. He's not scary at all. He's 6'8", but he's not scary at all.
All right, you ready to transition into the headlines?
Yes.
Let's do this. Jay, you want to join us? You have to place your hands like this, just
Yep.
like Wayne's World, and you go.
I think that's the first time we've ever gotten a guest to do it.
Oh, we did it with Frank one time, but we've never
Can't
done it
believe I
with someone
agreed
that
to
was so embarrassed. Spit take.
Bring on the New York guy and embarrass him.
That's
Got
exactly
the
it.
headline.
Takes a lot more than that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the first headline here. It is mortgage demand from home buyers spikes 33% annually. And this headline is from CNBC. It says, signaling no end to the summer spree. So we've been talking about the mortgage headlines a lot and the influx and outflux. And I think we had a drop and then we had a spike and now we're back up at this spike. So home buyers are buying, y'all. To quote CNBC, they have an insatiable appetite for new and existing homes. Mortgage apps to buy only rose 0.4% compared to last week, but are 33% higher than the previous year, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. CNBC said August is the new April due to the pandemic. Of course, low mortgage rates had something to do with it. Here's a quote from Joel Kahn. He is an MBA economist. He says that the home purchase market remains a bright spot for the overall economy. Mortgage rates at record lows and households sorry, I just hit a button and it deleted everything I was reading. And households looking for more space are driving this summer's surge in demand. Home refis declined 10% for the week, but were also higher by about 34% compared to the previous year. So there you go. So mortgage application spike showing a whole bunch of buyers ready to buy. Is that what you're seeing in your market, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, we have a crazy amount of buyers. It almost, I mean, okay, we've been talking about this for a while, but right around that early April, mid-April, they were just out of nowhere, out of the woodwork. But it's been really, really consistent. And it's almost like, I'm sure you guys are getting the same thing out of sellers, but it's like, hey, is the market for sellers really like it is, Dan? Is it like I'm hearing? Yes, it is. But I get that same thing on our interest rates really that low, Dan? Is it really a good time for buyers to buy? So what are you seeing in New York, Jay?
It's interesting. It's always so hard for me to dissect the New York City market or in a way that forces me to generalize the marketplace, because interest rates have been historically low for God knows how long now. I mean, the narrative of interest rates are low, you should buy at home, I feel like is so overplayed at this point. But the reality is they are insanely low. And in New York City being a very wealthy city, we kind of have a couple different segments where their buyers, the majority of whom, or a big segment of them, have to get financing like anybody else in other markets, and otherwise they can't afford the property. And those people are just going to buy their apartment regardless of whether interest rates are low or high. It certainly helps the argument to purchase if interest rates are so low. But then on the flip side, what I think we've seen more of over the last few years is extremely wealthy people taking advantage of what they would call free money. Right? Like, I don't have to finance this $3 million purchase, but I might as well get as much money from the bank as humanly possible, because those people can strategically replace that money and reinvest that money in something else, whether that's their own asset class that they practice, if they're in finance or if they're in some other industry. So they rather recap that money elsewhere. So, yeah, I mean, I think the reality is, you're going to see an uptick in now that people are buying again in loan applications, because the market has just resumed.
That's exactly what
he makes about the someone that wouldn't usually finance that is. That's very interesting. I like.
Yeah, I actually just had that scenario happen where someone asked their financial advisor if they should use cash or get a loan, and the advisor said, "Give me the cash and go get a loan."
Yeah.
And that's essentially what they did. So they got the loan at like 2.5% or something crazy. And they said that they should be making about 8 to 10% on their money that they invested at the same time. So now they're making 6% on the purchase, not including the actual purchase, if you kind of look at it that way. So
I mean, that is, not to sound cliche and corny and obnoxious, but that is the proverbial statement, the rich get richer, right? Yep. They're essentially using money to make more money.
Yeah.
Yep. Christina Smallhorn says, hello, gentlemen. Tim Macy says, screw you guys. I spirit fingered the crap out of it when I was on. That's my impression of Tim Macy. David said, are you seeing big discounts on the high rises, Jay?
Yeah, high rise is interesting word. Yes, New York City is definitely on discount. There's no question. The spread is very logically, the higher the price point, the bigger the discount. The lower the price point, the more stable the asset. The reality is, you mentioned something about millennials. We have a lot of millennial buyers in New York City. We always will. People will always flock to New York City under the age of, say, 35, right? Whether it's their first job, their second job, their third job. It's just an aspirational environment where people want to be at all times. That's what I've been fighting for on social media. And those buyers, that marketplace, to say the sub 1 million or sub 1.5 million marketplace, is pretty stable in the sense that there's a lot of buyers still in the marketplace and prices are reasonable. But yes, in the high rise, if that's your reference to the uber luxury, we're definitely seeing a slowdown and a come down in prices there.
Now, one of the things that Dan is about to cover is home prices. So it's kind of a perfect segue into your next article, Dan.
Well, sometimes we do that. Sometimes we're lucky enough to have a guest that does that for us.
Yeah. I gave David $1 to ask the question.
I know. See, I throw David a lot of money. He asked some great questions, so it's totally worth it. Hold on, I gotta scroll through some things here. I don't know where I'm at. It's a fun morning here on the Bearded Men and Real Estate Show. Yeah, I just scrolled through the story that I haven't had time to catch up on, so we'll catch that. All right. So home prices show signs of recovery, rising 4.3% in June, according to Case-Shiller. So that 4.3% annual rise matches what happened in May. So pretty much the same, but it's still on another rise. So gains had slowed slightly in May. So this appears to be a slow recovery or a small recovery from the Rona-induced setback in home sales in March and April. Now, remember, these numbers are always a couple months behind. That's why I've done more current numbers. I did June and July for my closed numbers in my city of Rancho Cucamonga, California. We're all high rises, only high rises here in Rancho.
Love the high rise scene in Rancho. It's phenomenal.
Dude, Jay's sending me a lot of high rise people here from New York. It's like a little mini New York. It's
a feeder, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, a feeder. The 10 city case. So I usually don't do the 10 city and the 20 city composite, but it's very interesting. So this 10 city Case-Shiller composite increased 2.8% annually, down from 3% the previous month, and the 20 city composite rose 3.5% year over year, down from 3.6. So it's still rising. So it's that same thing we've been covering. It's still rising, just slower. And to me, honestly, Ray, it's rising. I don't know, being affected by a global pandemic, it's not being as hurt as badly as I thought it might be. You know what I mean? So yeah. It's not that bad. But here's a quote. This is from Jay Glazer. More data will be required to understand whether the market resumes its previous path of accelerating prices, continues to decelerate, or remains stable. So he makes a very good point. So that said, it's important to bear in mind that deceleration is quite different from an environment in which prices actually fall. Does that make sense?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So deceleration is this essentially home prices gaining less rapidly.
So I guess that's what they mean, because I was kind of thrown by this headline when it said home prices show signs of recovery. I haven't seen much of a slowdown, but I guess
right.
in this phrasing, they're saying that the home price gains have again picked up pace slightly, saying they're still gaining.
You're still gaining slower than you were a year ago, but faster than you were a month ago. Is that what it says? How
to make a headline.
Right.
That's the worst. I will say though, I like the fact that he said you still need to collect data. That is something that very few people will acknowledge when they're writing these articles. Like, everybody is such a fact-based. I know everything about everything, and this is where the market is. For us, I say we're in New York City. We're very much in data collecting stages. I don't know exactly what the next 6 months are going to look like in New York City, and if you do, you're lying.
Well, and that's why I made it clear that these numbers that when we read these, which are monthly, they're usually a few months behind.
Right.
But Ray, I don't know if you had time, but I ran mine. So. Yeah. And I found it very interesting. So let me go back. So it says it slowed a little bit, and then May bumped up a little bit.
Right.
Or actually, they stayed the same. So it didn't decline. It stayed the same.
We're talking about prices, closed prices of homes, right?
Yes. Home prices rose 4.3% annually in June. Okay. So let me go to my little document. I ran June closed in high rises in Rancho Cucamonga. Just kidding. 138
One deal.
closed. Yeah, there's one closed, and it's only 2 stories. That's a high rise here. 138 closed. The minimum purchase price was 240, maximum was 1.5 million, average was 587,000. Okay. Average, our average days on market are a little skewed because of who sets what to where, but it was 31 days on market.
Wow.
So then I went to 138 closed. Okay. Then I went to July, 204 closed, which you would expect, right? I think we've all seen crazy Julys, right? We all have a pretty crazy July.
Yep.
204 closed. So 86 more closes. Let me do some quick math. 66 more closes. But now, so here's very interesting. So everything changed. The minimum purchase price, the lowest was 200 grand, which is crazy low here. That one must have been a fix and flip kind of thing.
Yeah.
The max was 1.5, so about the same. But the average went down $7,000. So 1.5% went down. So,
well, for the first time, we're in line with whatever the nation is doing. Ours went up 2.8%. So, and they said that the 10 city composite increased 2.8%.
Dude, that's dead on. You're part of that.
Yeah.
You're part of the 11 city composite. So
You're a statistic, right?
We are. Now, I did do the entire metro area, which is like maybe 1 million people. There's only 190 something thousand people in Little Rock. So I kind of did the whole metro.
I think there's 190,000 people in my building right now.
Yeah.
The Glazer team's checking in, saying hi.
Hey.
Thanks for tuning in.
So interesting that it went down. And more closes. So 60 something more closes, but that average sale price went down quite a bit. And then here's a really interesting one. So I did active real quick, just active everything. And remember, I don't do lows, highs, or median. I don't change anything, just all active in Rancho right now. So that's, as of July, 204 closes. Active right now, 183. Ray, we have less than a month inventory.
Wow. Is that the first time since we've been running the numbers that you're down less than a month?
It's a crazy change. And the average home price right now is 800 grand. There are middles, but there's only about 20 from 400 grand to 600 grand. There's only about 20 active listings right now in that price point. Everything else is in the 6s and 8s. And
what kind of monthly inventory is in New York? Like what would be a normal 3 years ago New York inventories at this number compared to today?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I would say I don't know if you guys use the statistic. We use a slightly different term. We use absorption rate. I don't know if that's like a familiar. Okay. So for us, absorption rate is increasing, meaning, the amount of buyers to the amount of sellers. I mean, right now, because the market is shifting in buyers' favor, we have more supply, more months of supply than we've had for a while. When I look at my specific segments of the market that I focus in, and that could even just be building by building breakdown, the same way you might look at like a neighborhood or a gated community or something like that. I look at like a pocket of like 3 blocks. And I see more inventory in these buildings than I ever have before. I don't know the exact, monthly supply, but I would say in the strong parts of the market, we're probably in like a 3 to 4 month supply. 3 years ago, 2017. Right now, we're probably pushing, 7 or 8 months of supply. I would probably venture to guess.
What percentage? So 7 or 8 months of supply would be a long time in our market.
It's historically a long time here.
A huge buyer's market here. So we are at like a 2 month supply right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, when Dan said 1 month supply, I said, man, I pine for those days.
You like those days. So that's the funny thing about real estate is you're like, wow, I love those days. But we're in situations where buyers can't find a house. So we have just buyers sitting on the sidelines waiting to purchase. And it's very difficult.
And we have sellers that are selling and worried that they're not going to be able to find a house to buy.
Yeah, listen, I hear that that's definitely a concern. But I guess for like the emotional component of that, I'd rather take that in a bubble than than the opposite of a bubble, which is obviously why New York City is in the news all the time, right? Like I rather deal with buyers who have problems of not being able to find something, or a seller who's like, I just sold my home for a crazy price, now find me something,
right?
Versus the opposite, basically.
Yeah. So you're having conversations with sellers about, hey, we could start at this price, but if you start at this price and you miss it, you're gonna drop. right? Those
Correct.
are
Yeah, I mean, I just got off the phone right before this show, and I said I rather the sort of the catchphrase I'm now using is I rather be the person who sets the market than follows the market.
Yeah,
right, when it comes to pricing. So I'm really trying to tell sellers, like, you have to be on the forefront of pricing, and you have to kind of stand on an island by yourself right now, because other sellers haven't adjusted to the market yet, and brokers don't have the backbone or the gumption or the the audacity or whatever you want to call it to tell sellers what they need to hear right now in New York City. And so they're sitting there with mispriced homes, and then the seller that you're talking to is, well, like, why can't we price it that person? Well, that person's not a comp. They haven't sold their property, and when they do become a comp, you'll just follow in their footsteps as opposed to becoming the comp that they start following. So for us now, we really have to kind of price ahead of everybody else,
right?
Which is lower.
It's better to adjust up than to be adjusted down by the market.
Yeah.
Great mindset to have.
What percentage of your buyers are millennials?
I would say at any given moment, I mean, I'm trying to actually move away from that, to be honest, just because I'm trying to bring my price point up. But, I would say probably in the ballpark 25-50%.
Okay.
Yeah,
Eugene says, hey, New York City, welcome to New Jersey. Melissa Mars there too. She says we don't have high rises here. So
I've never been to New Jersey. Just kidding. I was there yesterday.
Millennials could prompt condo resurgence. So I know you said you're moving away from it, but it looks like more millennials are crushing for those condos. For years, selling a condo in average America, I'm not sure about New York, but in average America was not easy, with most people looking to purchase single-family homes because they wanted yards. However, millennials may be changing those habits. CoreLogic released a report showing that in 2019, condos sold 16% lower than single-family residences. So the report pontificates that millennials might see condos as a more affordable option. Millennials could be driven, quote, towards buying condos because they tend to be more affordable than single-family homes, because condos typically come with a lower maintenance burden and are mostly located in urban cores. CoreLogic notes on its report that 40% of condo buyers last year were first-time home buyers versus 33% of the non-condo buyers first time. 47% of those were millennials. So this report brings up some questions, though. So, and this is kind of my questions that you guys can also chime in on. This year, so those numbers were for 2019, just now coming out. This year, in a post-pandemic market, is this still true? Or are people starting to move out of the urban areas, which I think Dan's next article will get into a little bit. You remember at the very beginning of this pandemic, everyone was saying, hey, people are going to run for the suburbs. And then Zillow comes out and says, well, we're not seeing that on search activity. But then Zillow. That is happening where you are seeing it in other data points. So another thing we don't know, well, I guess we do know, is that millennials have more money. And historically in our market, it was very difficult to buy a condo because most of the first-time home buyers were using FHA funds. And there are only 2 condos in our area that would go FHA due to the percent of owner versus renter occupant.
Oh, wow.
So how is it? Are you seeing FHA buyers? Are there those millennials that you're helping into a home? Are they having more money for a down payment? Like how are they purchasing the condos? Or I guess you guys say apartments.
Is this, so I've never touched an FHA loan in my career.
Wow.
So this article I think is a little bit, does not really, I would say, pertain to New York City. I mean, my mind goes to 2 places. One, almost everything in New York City is an apartment, right? So condo is a little bit misleading for New York City because we have apartments because we have different types of apartments. There are condos.
What's the difference? So in Arkansas, we don't even sell apartments unless we sell the entire complex. Right. It was really funny. I actually had a New Yorker contact me wanting to buy an apartment, and the apartment was like $1 million. And they're like, hey, we'd like to buy this apartment. It looks really nice. I said, great. I started getting them the info, and they said, well, because they were asking for all the information, maintenance and all that stuff. So I started sending them maintenance records, and they said, well, this is for the whole complex.
Like, no, that's
I said, right. And they said, no, we want one apartment. I was like, no, $1 million. You get the entire thing.
Hey, buy one, get 10 free.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually like 10. A 30-unit apartment.
Buy one, get 29 free.
So in Arkansas, we don't even sell individual apartment units. So what's the difference in a condominium and an apartment there in New York?
Right. So first of all, I don't know the exact number. Maybe I should, but the majority of New York City is what you might call apartments or high rises or vertical living. We are the truest vertical city in the world, I believe. Maybe Hong Kong or Tokyo could make that claim. So we have condominiums, which are actual apartment buildings where you buy an individual apartment and you obtain a deed to the property, what we call real property in our industry. We also have cooperative apartment buildings, which is essentially buying an apartment that is purchased in shares of the corporation. So the same way that we used to call up our stockbroker and say, I'd like to buy 5 shares of IBM. And then 2 weeks later in the mail, you would get a certificate that said, you are, Jay Glazer is now the proud owner of 5 shares of IBM Corporation. That is actually what you're buying in New York City. And those apartments are subject to an approval process, which makes New York, in my opinion, the most unique place to buy a home, because you could theoretically say, hey, I'd like to spend $1 million on this property. And ultimately the building says, well, we don't want you for whatever reason. And it's essentially, legal discrimination, if you will. And they could say whatever they want. And they don't typically give you a reason. They say, you're not approved. So it's one of the strangest and most unique places to have to buy, because you could not buy. You could try to buy and not buy. And so for the millennial conversation, the reality is any millennials coming to New York City who want to buy or who've lived in New York City, they're gravitating towards apartments anyway, because that's the majority of what they can afford and the majority of what's available on the marketplace. So it doesn't really add up in the article. Like, it's not like millennials are spurring houses to buy apartments. It's just apartments are the only option.
That's interesting. So I guess it is probably more or less in the other greater United States that you're seeing millennial condo buyers. But if you're in the middle, the flyover, when you hear of millennials buying condos, we think of like New York City and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to have that differentiation.
Yeah, I mean, also millennials are, what's the age? It's anybody up to the age of like 37 or 38 years old. So, if you look at millennials,
I'm the oldest millennial at 38.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty up too. But the reality is, like, if a millennial is 28 years old, they're buying condos also probably because they don't necessarily have kids and they don't need the outdoor space and the extra space. Mm-hmm. So there's also kind of an age component to that, right? And like where they are in their life cycle.
Yeah. Dusty Martin says you could send your NY buyers my way in AZ. They're going to retire here anyway.
My dad retired to Arizona.
Oh, there you go. Melissa Mara said we have sand, pine trees, and cranberry bogs. Oh, there you go.
I've never heard of any of those things.
Your team agrees with you, and that's good. Melissa Mara said it's me, but not LOL. Oh, the millennial. Yes,
the millennial thing.
Yes, she is a millennial. That's where it says see. So I guess in, Dan, you're about to cover an article that I thought was really interesting because it does have a little more information between just some of the, it's the second time I'm going to use this word, but some of the pontificating we heard earlier during the pandemic. So what does this say about people leaving the city or not?
Well, when we first started with this, it was the pontifications where they're leaving big cities. And then for some reason it kind of steered towards New York. Like they're all leaving New York. That's kind of where it's steered toward. Now, this one doesn't, it says big cities in the article, but it's kind of geared towards New York. And Barry Sternlicht, so he's the global investor that CNBC spoke with. He said on Tuesday that he believes masses of people are moving away from U.S. major cities in favor of the suburbs, which we've reported, 5 or 6 different stories, different ways. This is a quote from him. There's hundreds of thousands of people looking for suburban homes, and I would say it's not as driven by the COVID situation as it is safety and law and order, and that is now pervasive across big cities in the United States, sadly. He's referring to the recent protests that have sometimes turned violent. Tax policy is another force that could be playing into the desire for affluent people to relocate from large cities such as New York, said Sternlicht. So he goes on, although cities may be facing declining revenues as a result of the Rona, Sternlicht said, if you tax the wealthy even more in New York City and they leave, then the social net has to be absorbed by the remaining residents and you can force them to leave. He goes on, they're leaving now. I've become a real estate broker for Miami. And he has a firm headquartered in Miami Beach. And he said, I keep sending friends down and showing them houses and they can buy, and they're buying. So he does, if you want more, I just wanted to hit a quick article because, you know, we got Jay for a limited time and us for a limited time, but this is on CNBC. If you want to go more, he goes more into politics, and if this person gets in, then this will happen. If that person gets in, that'll happen. But I don't want to go down that path. I just want to kind of get Jay's feeling on, you know, that article and then all the other ones that have seemingly attacked him and his city.
So for starters, listen, Barry Sternlicht is a wildly successful human being. I think he's worth, you know, $2 or $3 billion. He is insanely successful. The first thing that I think of is he doesn't live in New York City. So you made it very clear, and I think I don't think he's singling out New York. I think certainly the tonalities to suggest that New York is like other cities in what he's kind of articulating. So I'm not going to go on the affront against certainly because he's not singling out New York City here. But the reality is he doesn't live. He lived in Miami, right? Like he did say that he's in Miami. He has lived in Miami for quite some time. Like Barry Sternlicht, I don't know him personally. I know of him. You know, I know people who run in his circle, and he hasn't been in New York for some time. So it's so easy to, like, again, pontificate about a city that you're not actually living in. And I think one of my big challenges that I've been sort of why I've gone on the offensive is because I have no issue with people leaving a city for whatever reason they feel necessary, whether someone did cough taxes, which I find, no offense to that person, I'm sure a lovely person, I find that an obnoxious comment. Like whatever reason you want to leave, like if you feel unsafe, again, which I think is total nonsense, then fine, leave, right? Like whatever your reason. But if you're not in the city, like you're not coming into the city and experiencing what the rest of us are experiencing, I find it hard for you to have such a profoundly impactful comment on what life in the big cities is. Like if you're here and you are unhappy with what you're experiencing here and you want to leave, you are well within your rights to do so. And good luck to you. But if you're not here, it's very hard for you to make claims about a city you're not spending time in. I mean, I actually got into it over email with a client who never lived in New York. His son lives here. He's from Long Island, which is a suburb of New York City. And he actually retired down to Florida, and he's in Miami. And he's sending me these emails about the mayor of New York and what a terrible job he's doing and all these just sort of like inflammatory comments. And I said, dude, you're not here. How can you be sending me emails about what life is like in the city that I wake up in every single morning, and you're not even here? Mm-hmm. So I have no issue with people, you know, making commentary. But if you're not here, I think you should reserve your opinion, you know, until when you are. Right, like the violent protests. Everybody kept saying, you know, the protests that were happening during the Black Lives Matter. Yes, there was a ton of protests, and 99% of them were peaceful and were well orchestrated. Yeah. There was a couple idiots who decided to get a little unruly, and that became the headline for months. Right, that to me is not exactly what happened. If you were actually here, I sat on my stoop daily watching the protests unfold in front of me. Right, like they were not violent. I did not feel unsafe at one point at all.
Dusty Martin agrees with you. She said, that's fair. I am kind of obnoxious. She said, I just said that 60% of my buyers last year were relocates from high tax states, mostly California, New York, and other Northeast states. Tim said, New York City is completely different animal and pizza.
Yeah, well, pizza is our animal. So Tim, you're partly right there.
Yeah. Their state animal is pizza.
Lisa Burke says, whatever your reason for leaving anywhere, it's just a decision, not drama.
I agree with that, Lisa.
Yeah. So you remember, Dan, we covered a story about a month ago during the protest at the height of the not BMOR, at the height of the BLM stuff. Right. And a real estate agent was sending emails to clients or a list of people in New York, telling them to relocate to Florida. I think it was
Florida. Remember, it wasn't something about tired of being unsafe, or it was something like, it was very much steering away from the riots and the the safety and all that kind of stuff. Right. Jay, have you seen any kind of outflux due to that? Have you seen, I think I saw your post where you found someone that was doing that kind of marketing. This guy got let go from his real estate agency when he did that.
But have you seen anything like that happening where people are actively marketing into New York, trying to get you to come out?
First of all, can you guys hear me? My sound is a little. All right, cool.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, I mean, there was that one guy who I actually don't even think I saw what he posted. I want to know. No, I haven't seen. The only thing I see sometimes is I see people like kind of making tax comments as if like that is the number one driver for most people, which I personally don't think it is at the end of the day. I think that certainly it's a consideration. We sold an apartment recently where he's an entrepreneur and a startup guy, and he said, I basically can't live in New York City because of my particular situation. So it does exist. I'm not totally ignorant to the fact that it does exist. I haven't seen too much like direct marketing related to protests or anything like that. I mean, quite frankly, you just can't, right? I mean, that is just
it's just tasteless,
off limits. And if you are making comments like that, I certainly am not looking for your marketing for inspiration. So
yeah, I think it was a big backfire.
No, listen. I mean, I think in some ways the power of protesting is one of the privileges of living in a city like New York, right? Like I have myself historically, not to get too political, I have protested in the past in a different life, and ultimately, like it's a right to do so. And New York City is a passion city, and people like to express their voice here. And I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that.
It's much easier to get noticed in a protest in New York City versus a protest here in Arkansas. Like you could go to the main drag and maybe a couple of thousand people would see. Maybe.
Yeah.
It's a much better way to get your voice heard. But let me bring up this article because this is from a local New Yorker, and he's saying that it's going to take decades for New York to recover from the coronavirus pandemic. I want to get your thoughts on that too. This is developer Don Peebles. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah. I mean, so a couple things there. One, again, I don't know Don Peebles. I know the name. I know his brand and his business. He's a billionaire living in his high tower, making these profound comments. He's not a boots on the ground person, right? He doesn't live in the same world the three of us live in. He doesn't have some of the problems that we might have. But the reality is also he works in a very specific marketplace, which is the new development market. What the pandemic, what people are losing sight of is the pandemic has its impact, but the market, especially in the new construction development world, the high rises, for the person who made the high rise comment, that market has been on the decline for 2 or 3 years already and will continue to be on the decline because there's too much oversupply. And the reality is these developers, himself included, got extremely greedy with the price points and expectations they were hoping to get. When you're building something with the expectation of getting $6,000 a foot, right? Just do the simple math on that. I mean, it's obscene, the price points we're talking about. So, of course, at some point, the empire is going to come crashing down, right? Like, if you get to price points that are simply not sustainable for long periods of time, the Jenga board is going to come tumbling down. And so, ultimately, that's what we're seeing in New York City. I don't think necessarily that's a byproduct of the COVID-19 pandemic. I think that's just what we had already seen. And now you just kind of magnify it with this pandemic that's hit.
Right. I think so too. I mean, some of what you said does echo what he's talking about a little bit. So he's kind of on your side, but he does talk about being more competitive with Nashville, Austin, Texas, Dallas. And he said, if we keep blinders on, New York City's hole is just going to dig deeper. So he's referring to the whole, the folks. I think there was an article last week that talked about the number of people leaving New York City daily, but I don't know how accurate that is. First off, I had a friend that came down to Arkansas during the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic. He was working there. And then I was texting him and he was like, I don't know if I'm going back. It was pretty bad. He kind of didn't like the feeling of not being able to get out. And then this week he's posting pictures being there. And I said, oh, you're back. He said, yeah, couldn't stay away. And he said, I asked him about it and I asked him about some of the things that we were talking about today, just kind of like taxes. I was like, tell me about this and tell me about that. And he said, you know what? It's hard to change it from the outside. He said, it's much easier to be a force of change from the
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think that's what Jay's doing too.
I think that's what I am trying to do. And obviously it ruffles some people's feathers, and certainly my tonality is, more aggressive than maybe it needs to be.
Well, you're from New York though. I mean, you have
it's kind of expected.
But the reality is, listen, we first of all, I don't know if you guys believe this. I think we have such short-term memories, right? Like 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, like things were going real well in New York City, and now the world is ending. Like we are as humans very resilient and very, and very resourceful, and we'll rebound, right? New York City will eventually rebound, just like the rest of the country and the rest of the world, and everything will ultimately rebound. Like until I literally look out my window and the world is collapsing and it's like, a rock movie and we will not make it till tomorrow, I'm going to assume that eventually we're going to rebound and we're going to be okay, right? So that's what I think I'm trying to say in New York is like, yes, right now it's not as honky-dory as we'd like it to be. But at the end of the day, like we will make it through this, right? And the more people who buy into that, the better off we'll be, like your friend, versus the people who are on the outside looking in saying like, oh my God, it's terrible, it's terrible, it's terrible. I just don't think that helps anybody.
Yeah. Dusty agrees. She said totally true. Running from problems fixes nothing.
And let me add too, this isn't really real estate related, but the reason I have that picture behind me is because I've been in New York a few times and I absolutely love it. There's just something about that city that you're there and you just feel alive.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between like when you have a job that's up and coming, not necessarily has to be in New York, but you're a young entrepreneur or you're a young businessman or business person and you want to go find some exciting work and have a good social life outside and just have an exciting. I mean, New York is really the only place for that. You're going to make obscene amounts of money. You're going to have a great life. It's going to be fun. It's never ending. The city never sleeps. The energy is electric at 8 a.m. It's electric. Something's going on at all times in that city.
Yeah.
So when I see, obviously Dusty her comment, she doesn't market to the Northeast. But she's talking about snowbirds, birds and people like that. And then obviously retirees and things, but I mean, they've done their time. They are either from there or they moved there and found their lives there. And now they're moving on. But when you just say these incendiary things like, well, because of taxes or because of the protests, it's a little offensive to me because I love that city, even though I've only been there 3 times. But it's more about like if you want to live there, live there. If you don't. Right. But being outside of it and making these comments about a city that maybe, and I'm not saying anyone in specific, but who these articles we've read are just people that are looking at some stats and saying, well, New York is failing.
Right.
I think going along with what Jay said, until that thing is falling down, like there's holes in the sides of buildings and they're collapsing like Jenga puzzles to go full circle. There's going to be a life to that city that people just want to have, and they're going to be there.
Yeah. I also think to myself, like, not to be so obnoxious to think that New York City is the center of the universe, but like, isn't it in everybody's best interest for New York City to be thriving? Right. Like as one of the epicenters of the world, like why bash a city that so many people have built their business on, their careers, their lives, right? Whether it's, people on the entrepreneurial spectrum or the art spectrum, like whatever it is, so many great things have come out of New York. Like why spend time not trying to make New York, make New York great again?
There you go. Where's your red cap, bro?
MNYGA, Meniga.
You're gonna get so much heat for that.
Oh, God.
All right, so one of the things that we talked about with the Peebles is that you said that he's kind of in a different part of the market. He's in new builds, right? Yeah. Well, Dan has some news coming up about builders, and this could attribute to his comment, kind of a foreshadowing of what's actually happening in the market.
Yeah, this one is now, so it's exciting, right? We've been finally talking about getting new construction going again, right? Make new construction great again. MNC, I don't know. I can't even do the acronym, but anyway, and we're excited. It's cool, but then it's like, there's always a thing. So it's great news that we're finally getting all these new homes that we so desperately need, right? Well, that we're now finally here. A recent spike in softwood lumber prices is contributing to the increased average price of the new single-family home. And this is from Realtor Magazine. So magazine.realtor.com, whatever. Now, this is where it gets a little crazy. The new single-family homes have increased by average of about 14 grand. And this is a national story. So that's in the last 4 months, since April 17th. And new multifamily homes have increased about 5 grand, 5,500. So this is a quote from the NAHB themselves. That is the National Association of Home Builders. Without increased domestic production and reductions in Canadian tariffs on softwood lumber, these higher input prices will slow the market. So in case you didn't know, the softwood is used throughout. It's literally structural framing, beams, joists, headers, rafters, trusses, flooring, underlayment, interior walls, ceiling, finishing, cabinets, doors, windows, roofing, siding, and exterior features like garages, porches, decks, railings, fences, and landscape walls, like literally in everything. So if that price goes up, what's going to inevitably happen? The NHB estimates that items in a home that require lumber and what's used throughout the construction process could mean buyers see prices increase an extra 19.2%. And then in June, the median home price rose 5.6% to $329,000 compared to a year ago, and that's nationally. So even that lower end market where we so desperately need homes, that price is increasing because they can't afford the lumber to buy.
They're not going to take the cut on the margins because they've been doing that already.
Yeah,
I had no idea softwood was so viable.
Well, I mean, you kind of know, right? But then as I was reading the article, that's why I left all that in there. It's literally every part of the home is
That's why you should move to New York, where buildings are made of metal.
Made of steel built.
Real steel, New York.
There you go. All right, so we have a couple of articles that, Dan, I'm going to fly through because I would like to get to the color forecast and talk about with Jay. So there's two articles here that I just want to kind of quickly discuss. Is that cool? And we can skip the one that will probably be more applicable next week due to the hurricanes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, let's skip the flood score. I mean, honestly, I don't know. This FHFA one we need to cover.
Yeah, I think so too. So we've been talking about it for a little while, but the FHFA will charge an extra refi fee starting December 1st. Now that's a different date than we heard last time. So Be More does it again, kind of. Last week, we discussed the FHFA refi fee and how it unfairly placed a burden on good quality refinancers in the amount of $1,400 per $300,000 refinanced. And we discussed how this move didn't target the borrowers that FHFA said were the most risky. Now they came out and said, hey, guys, a lot of you don't understand what we're saying. It's not a rate hike. It's a fee. So it only happens one time.
No, but the whole thing was a 0.5 rate hike. That's what it was.
And the rest of the industry said, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
Then FHFA said that it has to make up for the losses from COVID, but not the actual losses, the projected losses.
Right.
So here's a quote from the article. The FHFA now says the fee is necessary to cover projected COVID-19 losses of at least $6 billion that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The FHFA anticipates $4 billion in loan losses, $1 billion in foreclosure, $1 billion in servicer compensation, and other forbearance expenses. Which, by the way, forbearance did tick down, but is still not out. So it's down to 7.2. That's the next article. Oh, that's cool how it leads together. So 41 members of Congress have signed a letter to the FHFA director, Mark Calibra, objecting to the fee. So they delayed it until December 1st. They're still doing it, but they're delaying it. So guys, if you want to fight this, continue to fight. Send him an email, give him a phone call, and let Mark, Calabria, know what you think about this for your sellers and buyers. You know, a lot of people in the real estate industry are like, well, it doesn't affect us. It's just refis. Well, it's going to add an additional fee to someone that wants to sell their house in a year or two. So it does affect you because it affects your clients. So if you don't want to see this fee, it kind of seems a little bit overreaching. That the part I find most offensive, like I wouldn't be mad if they said, hey, we're going to add this fee because we have some losses that we think are going to come up from the COVID-19. That's understandable. Like, let's figure out a way to work that in and to kind of hedge the risk, right?
Right.
But the reason they keep going back and saying it is this quote, and it drives me crazy. Homeowners are saving hundreds of dollars per month on their mortgage and are reducing their debt to income ratios, which induces the risk to investors.
Right.
Furthermore, lenders report re-verifying employment with 24 hours of closing, further reducing the risk. So their whole, hey, we're going to charge this to you because you're getting great benefit out of the current economy.
Right.
That's offensive to me. I don't know why, but I just find that that's so rude. Like, hey,
I work my butt off.
You're getting a lot of benefit. So bam, we're going to hit you with this fee.
It's also a little off. I've actually had to turn some of my own customers off of refinancing because they get these other articles that are like interest rates are so low, but then when they actually bake in all of these fees in the applications and whatnot, they get to the point where like if amortized over the 2 years that they're going to benefit from the lower rate, it offsets any of that. So they just don't do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what I heard a lot. So I specifically had one conversation about a week and a half ago, that same thing. No, I'm getting a 2.85, but the closing costs are like $7,800.
Exactly.
Yep.
So yeah, it's going to offset. And he was going down to a 15, but it would essentially offset like 8 years of it kind of thing. It wouldn't be the whole term. So it was like, so he's just kind of sitting there going, well, I don't know. I mean, do I just wait until these fees aren't there and it's 3.25% and then I'm at the same? Like,
right. Melissa Marr said it is rude. So let's just tack on another fee to make it not worth it. Yeah. So I want to cover this last article too. Forbearance rate falls to 7.2%. This is an enormous fall from a 7.21%. And apparently everyone was shocked. They said, we remain surprised that forbearance rates are not climbing despite the expiration of enhanced unemployment benefits. That's Jarrett Steiberg, managing director of Cohen Nash Washington Research Group, said. He said, we are not sure how long this trend will continue. So the reason for the supply is the climbing unemployment rate. They rose once again to above 1 million in the week ending in August 15th, which is an increase for the first time since July. So the other thing they were watching were the pace of exits. So this is the part that I think is more interesting and might be due to, y'all remember the articles that we covered about everyone accidentally falling into forbearance because they would call or they went on the website and they clicked a button and they didn't realize that that button was like throwing them into forbearance.
Yeah.
So we had a bunch of people that were in forbearance that exited forbearance. So what they're saying now is that they're watching the pace of exits from forbearance and that has slowed. So that may have slowed from everyone who accidentally got into it.
Right.
Is now kind of out of it. And the folks that you have in it are the people that actually need it. So we'll keep an eye on that as the pace of exits continue to decrease, which means more people are staying in it.
Pace of exits. But I mean, it's also possible that, they did go into forbearance and now they've since, they were furloughed, but now they're back to work and they're like, hey, let's, do a loan mod and get me back on track. I'm fine now. Everything's cool.
Lisa Perk agrees. It's plummeting that 1/100%.
Yeah. Well, it's plummeting.
Love headlines.
Anything to make a headline sensational.
Anything. All right, so let's get to a lighter note, and then we'll close this ship down.
Can we not talk about Apple?
Babe, no, I'm not going to talk. I'm going to save the Apple story. I still think it's valid because Kevin Costner's Waterworld was right, and I think you guys should look up that information. Just so you know, Waterworld is coming. It's on the way.
It's starting with an Apple store.
It's starting with Apple Store. So look that up. We'll go talk about that another time. But
do you want me to read through this one?
Well, I want to show it. We can just talk about it. I want to know in New York, Jay, this is a very important question that I think everyone wants to know. Okay. What is the primary color trend you're seeing?
No, wait, what are we asking them on? Just home sellers or like flips or what?
All of the above. Like what is the color that you walk in and you're like, wow, that's going to be the color of the year, or wow, that is a trendy color that's going to stick around for a couple of years and we're going to see this color over and over.
Can I phone a friend?
Yeah.
Just kidding. Oh God.
You've only got 2 lifelines left.
Oh my God. I wish I knew the answer to that question. I would say right now, I mean, it's just such a boring answer, but I think gray, some shade, 50 shades of gray is actually pretty popular right now in New York.
It's still popular in our market too.
Yeah. I'm not seeing, I would say it's more like little things like accent walls are pretty big these days. I see people painting accent walls. Wallpaper is still pretty popular here in the city, here and there, kind of made a comeback. But I don't know if there's a specific color that I see a lot of property. I would put myself up there with brokers who see a ton of homes in New York. I'm like,
and when you close your eyes, you don't see a particular color that is merging all of those properties that you've seen?
Yeah, I would say like some sort of grayscale.
Right.
Honestly. Yeah. Like a lighter kind of Stonington gray, Benjamin Moore vibe has been like the color of a while for me.
Now, Tim Macy might still be watching the show. He's Tim Macy of the Tim Macy Show. We always call him #whiteboxing because I think when he was on the show, we talked about how he was a boxer and There were
We had
people in big cities like yours doing white boxing, going in and taking all the colors and just painting them pure white, which Lisa Perk says absolute white is a color that people like.
No, they were ripping everything out.
They were ripping everything out
and painting it white and selling it as a
white
blank
boxing.
slate.
Right. Are people still doing that?
I've never heard of anybody. Well, we have white boxing in the sense that like you could buy just like a shell of a property, but that is probably less than 1% of the market, I would say. It's
Interesting.
White boxing is not a big thing here because what we have is estate sales, right? So estate sales are typically just a place that needs to be completely redone, but it's not white boxed. So we don't have white boxing.
Interesting.
The only person I know
Well,
who bought is my dad in 1985, the loft that he bought that I grew up in. So, honestly, it's a true story.
Melissa Mara said someone posted a series of photos, blackened out houses, and I love it all. I have seen the black. I mean, look at So this is all black. I know it's colored right now, but that's because I have a light. So my entire office is black. So I do like the black trend. Tim Macy said, "Someone say my name."
Say my
he was
name.
watching the show. So any other color guesses before we show?
Well, I'm hoping. I like the heavier. I like the darker blues, like on cabinets. Then you do a lighter countertop. So I'm gonna go with dark because I'm done with gray. Every single flip here, every one of them,
it's all gray.
I feel like I'm walking into an office. It's gray with white countertops, and then gray, and then some lighter gray flooring. And it was cool at first, but then everyone did it.
Yeah,
everyone.
I hear you.
Yeah,
we still see like the gunmetal finishes. The fixtures that are black gunmetal.
That's awesome. That's
cool. Here a little bit. So
what do you got, Ray?
Dusty says I'm seeing darker blues and gold and brass fixtures.
Yeah, gold and brass, gold for sure.
And
brass and white kitchen. I'm loving right now. The brass and white kitchen.
That's a good look. Good look. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to bring up what Behr says is the color for 2021. If you're keeping track, I believe navy was 2018. No, wait, that was 2019. I think it was like a coral salmon color was 2020. And this year,
Behr.
Look at that. Here's the breakdown. They like this green color. They like this yellow color. These are deep, earthy colors that they're picking for this coming year.
Yeah.
When our color team began exploring the palette for the coming year, we needed to be grounded in what we've been craving: comfort and personalization. A new elevated articulation of comfort goes beyond beige and gray and green hues and embraces a color in a way that we can redefine and enhance types of space inside and outside of our home.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Here's the breakdown: casual comfort, light and cozy neutrals, optimistic view, an eclectic mix of bright hues, Mediterranean or 70s glam vibe. Really? That's interesting. A subtle focus with soft pastels. A calm zone would be nurturing blues and greens. And then a quiet haven is the darker, evocative colors.
Dusty called that yellow baby yellow.
Let's go. Where's it? Oh, I need to get to these. Hang on. There's a lot of comments happening.
Yeah, Jay's got some fans jumping in right now. He must have sent out $20 to everyone.
Dusty says because gold and brass aged so well the first time around. Yeah, that's a valid point. Hey, look at there. Howard Broadsley. Happy birthday, buddy.
Birthday boy right there.
And then Melissa Mars says, I almost did brass, but went a totally different way. Jay, you got some fans.
Thanks, Ishma.
Ishma Best says Jay Glazer is the man, best broker in NYC. What'd you say? Sorry, Jay,
I said we used to work together, so he has no choice but to say that.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Lisa Perk said those are the Pantone colors. Everyone has different colors. Yes, that's true. I think Sherwin-Williams will release theirs in the coming months there. Melissa says ag green is okay. Navy and coral. Hi, Jay.
Hi,
Monica Laws. Monica's joined our show before. She's commented before.
Yeah,
Jesse says the green is okay, but baby food yellow's got to go.
I agree.
Terrible 90s flashback. So y'all are liking those Tuscan colors. 70s glam vibe.
Yeah.
I have been seeing a lot of the retro look come back, and especially on the tile, like you'll have a white tile or a dark colored tile, and I'll have like a gold line design in it that kind of matches a fixture that's golden lined. I am seeing that kind of thing come back. So
I saw one the other day that was really, it was like brushed brass, and it was legit. It was with it had blue cabinets for the main, and then it had white cabinet for the island with a light tile or a light stone for the countertops, and then it had brushed brass. It was fantastic. Way different than the 80s and 90s brass. It was high end. It was expensive. It was nice. It was really, really cool looking. But I think overall, it's just the vibe. The house has to fit the vibe of the owner, really. And I think if you walk into Ray's black room and go, you know, Ray, you seem much cheerier than this room. I don't think this fits you.
As Jay called it, the murder room. I think.
The murder room, yeah.
Yeah. One day I'll give you a tour. I actually have a video coming out giving you a tour of this makeshift studio I have until we finish construction here. But yeah, I'm loving the black look. Most of our home is gray, different colors of gray, different versions of grays and white.
Of course.
Yeah, Lisa Burke said I'm an absolute white girl. Wait, that came out wrong. Basic. I think the term is basic, Lisa.
Yeah. Not absolute. Wait,
That's
so
right.
she makes absolute.
That's right.
Okay, there we go. All makes sense.
Well, Jay, thanks for joining us on the show, man. Before you head out, tell people where they can find you.
Where can you find me? You can find me in New York City.
You're in New York? Wow, I didn't.
New York.
What are our handles? Glazer Team is our Insta handle.
Yeah, Glazer team that's watching, drop all your Insta links
Yeah,
into the comments there.
in there. He's dropping it in right now.
Okay, good.
I'm giving him the stare. Facebook, Glazer Team. You can email us if you want to chat. glazerteam@corcoran.com, like Barbara Corcoran Babs from the famous show.
There you go.
I don't even know what the show. What's it called?
Shark Tank.
That's how I have to tell people outside of New York City to recognize our brand. Yeah, that's pretty much how you can find us.
And dude, if you guys want a real impression of New York, go to an actual New Yorker that works it. Go right here to Jay.
Yeah. People are surprised I'm from New York though, because I don't New York. I'm drinking the water from New York. I don't have the accent.
Yeah.
You do a little bit. I mean, if you're from Arkansas hearing you talk, you got a little, it's a little northern. It's not heavy like New Yorker, but it's
That's the highest compliment anybody's ever paid me before.
Tim wants to know how's Barb doing. I'll let you guys catch up later. Dan, before we go, where can people find you, dude?
D Ludwig Rocks, DLUDWIGROCKS, everywhere.
Yep, and I am Ray Zorback, RAYZORBACK. So look us up, chat with us. Jay, thanks for joining the show, man. I appreciate you dropping by.
You guys.
All right, bye, everybody.
Later, dude.